Hey y'all, Coach in the Fight here, talking about Passover of the year 2021. Now, maybe you're aware of the discrepancy between the fixed Jewish calendar and the Enoch calendar. If you aren't aware of it, then that explains why all of the talk about calendars in the year 2021. Turns out the Jewish calendar that everybody has been dependent on is drifting, just like Moses said it would, and it is now calculating feast days in the wrong month. Now, for most years, it's not a problem. Only in about 5 out of 19 years will the feast days come a month too early, and 2021 is actually one of those years. We've done plenty of classes on this subject, but to quickly explain what I'm talking about, you see here how the fixed Jewish calendar says that Passover will start on March the 27th of the year 2021. Well, we know from Leviticus that that's actually supposed to be the 14th day of the first month. So if we subtract 14 days from that, we end up on March the 13th being the date of the new moon. The problem with that is that March the 13th falls before the spring equinox. Therefore, it is not the head of the year, and in fact, the year 2021 should be a pregnant year with 13 months. But anyway, like I said, we've covered that in a lot of classes, and we will continue to talk about this. But in this video, we just want to talk about Passover. In particular, when is Passover of the year 2021? And what I want to do in this video is show you guys how to make that determination for yourself. But then at the end of the video, we will actually discuss the dates of the rest of the feast days in the year 2021. If you pay close attention to this video, you should be able to have the tools you need in order to determine when Passover is in any year. And I would suggest that you do so going forward because, like we said, we can't depend on the Jewish calendar anymore. So let's see how this works. So now let's come over to timeanddate.com. Look in the month of March 2021. And we see that on the 13th of March 2021 was the projected new moon. Now, we have to be real careful here because the fixed Jewish calendar uses this in their determinations of the feast days. This is a mathematical calculation to determine the exact time of the new moon. And notice that it's at 4:21 a.m. There's no way possible a human would be able to see that moon anywhere in the world. The correct way to observe the new moon to determine the beginning of the months is by observation, not by calculation, but by observation, which is going out and actually seeing the new moon for yourself. And if you actually went out on the 13th, you wouldn't have seen anything because 0.3% is not enough of the moon to actually be able to see it with the naked eye. But if you'd have went out on the 14th, you would actually saw 2% of the moon illuminated, and you could declare that the month has started. But like we said, that falls before the spring equinox. It falls almost a week before the spring equinox, so therefore that's not the head of the year. That is actually only the beginning of the 13th month in the year 2021. And that's the way they would have done it in the old days, is when the new moon didn't meet the criteria for the head of the year, they simply just look for the new moon of the next month to declare that the year had actually started. So now, if we go 29.5 days forward, we'll see that man's calculation determines that the new moon will fall at 9:30 p.m. on the 11th. Again, that's a calculation and not actually how you determine the new moon. If you go out there on the 11th, you're not going to see anything because, like we said, a 0.3% moon is not visible. You can't really see that. It's too dim and it's too low in the sky. And if you go out there on the 12th, you will be in the same situation. with only a 5% moon being illuminated. This is why it's so important to use observation, because if you have been dependent on the beast system to tell you when the new moon would occur, you would actually be a few days too early. It is only on the 13th day of April that you will actually see the small crescent of the moon, and that will be a 2.6% moon, and it's on that evening that you will declare that the month has started, and that will be the first month of the year. So it is from that point that you can start calculating the date of Passover. So the evening of the 13th will start day 1 of the month Nisan. The evening of the 14th will start day 2. And the evening of the 20th will start day 8. So the evening of the 26th will actually start the day of Passover, not the day of unleavened bread. We're not talking about that week-long celebration that starts on the 15th day of the first month. We're actually talking about that one-day celebration that's often looked over, and that's actually the Passover day. That's when you will do communion with the bread and the wine starting that evening on the 26th. And it is also a preparation day if you plan to eat roasted lamb. Starting in that evening is when you'll start the processing of that lamb, and you'll cook it during the daylight hours on the 27th, and you will start to eat it on the evening of the 27th, which will be the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And this is how the biblical calendar for the first month looks. When you look in Leviticus chapter 23, you see that there are actually 3 festivals in the first month called the spring feasts. You have Passover, which we talked about, starts on the evening of the 26th of April in the year 2021. And then you have Unleavened Bread, which is a week-long feast that starts on the evening of the 27th. But now, when you look closely at the scripture, you see that there's a 3rd festival that starts in the first sacred month, and that is the day of first fruits, or the day to start the Omer count. So you have the beginning of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which starts on the evening of the 27th, and being a 7-day long festival, with the daylight hours of the 28th being day 1. That puts the end of the Feast of Unleavened Bread on the evening of the 4th. And you guys check my work here, because I'm using my fingers to count. But when I start off on the evening of the 27th as the first day of Unleavened Bread, that makes the evening of May the 3rd the beginning of the 7th day of the festival, and it would end on the following evening, May the 4th. So when we're looking at this representation of the first month of the biblical calendar, the last day of Unleavened Bread will end at sunset on May the 4th. Then we'll start a Sabbath day, which will include the daylight hours of May the 5th, and May the 6th will be the date of first fruits, or the day that we begin the Omer count. So while we're at it, let's take a quick look at when the rest of the feast days will fall for the year. The 3rd month, which will include the mandatory feast day of Pentecost, will start on the new moon in June. On June the 11th, there will be 1.7% of the moon illuminated, which will easily be declared the first day of the 3rd month. And after we have added 50 days to the Feast of First Fruits, we see that Pentecost falls on the 14th day of the 3rd month. You would think it would be the 15th day of the month, but Pentecost is a preparation day, like the day of Passover, when animals are slaughtered and processed for eating on the Sabbath day, which will be the 15th day of the month. So let's see when that day will be. Starting at the evening of June the 11th as the first day of the month, according to the way I count, the Feast of Weeks, or Shavuot, will begin on the evening of the 24th, with the daylight hours of the celebration being on the 25th. and the Sabbath day being on the 26th, and that great day of the covenant being on the 27th. But we'll talk more about that day later on. The last feast days that we'll talk about will be in the 7th month, which will begin with the new moon after October the 6th. This is yet another way that we know that 2021 has a 13th month, is because the new moon that will fall in September the 6th falls before the fall equinox. Therefore, it will be in the 6th month instead of the 7th month. Now, we see here that the 0% moon will be on October the 6th. Some people actually go out there on the 0% moon to verify that a moon was not sighted in the sky, to give them more assurity when they actually see it that it is the new moon. And many people will wait till the 7th, right after sunset, when they will see a 2.5% moon, declaring the beginning of the 7th month, and that's when they'll start blowing the trumpets. And we'll blow the trumpets all of the evening on the 7th and throughout the day on the 8th, letting everybody know that we are in the first day of the 7th month. So when we're looking at the calendar for the 7th month, the memorial of blowing of trumpets will start on the 7th and end on the evening of the 8th. That would mean that the Day of Atonement will start on the evening of October the 16th and last until the evening of October the 17th. And the beginning of the Feast of Tabernacles will start on the evening of the 21st of October, and it will last for 8 days. So, if you have a wall calendar that lists the Jewish feast days on it, you might want to get you a big black Sharpie and mark those days out, because they will all appear about a month early for the year 2021. All right. Well, if you got any questions about all of this, please drop down in the comment section of this video. Make sure you hit that like button and that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. And be sure to share this video with others. There are many people around the world who love the Lord and remember to keep his feast days every year, but are not aware of this discrepancy in the Jewish calendar. And they, just like in 2013, will be celebrating the feast days a month early, which is not acceptable according to biblical law. You have to do the feast days on the right day. So share it on your Facebook, copy and paste the link into your Twitter account, send it to your friends and relatives. And when you're watching other channels that are speaking about calendars, suggest that they watch this video so that we can all collaborate, giving them the opportunity to point out any errors that I have made, so that by the time these feast days come around, we'll be sure to be getting the dates right. And may our Father bless you and keep you. May he make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May our Father lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace.